Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Zack Golden, and welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. Happy to be here with y'all today. As I'm sure most of y'all are aware, we have a ton of information to cover today, as it's been a pretty eventful week, not necessarily in a positive way, but yeah, things happen, and we're here to cover them. So we're going to have a lot to talk about all over the place, from Massey's with the testing anomaly from Ship 36. Lots of stuff happening at the actual production site, and of course, a lot of good information at the launch site with something that I've been waiting to talk about for quite a long time. So, I've been debating whether or not I was going to do that anytime soon, but I'm just really, really excited about it. So I think today is the day, but we will get there when we get there as far as that goes. In the meantime, we do have Alex joining me today. So Alex, thanks for being here.
I'm glad to be here, Zack, and happy for everybody who's listening. And I'll toss it back to Zack because we have a lot to cover.
Yeah, and don't mind me as I'm still getting some stuff together here in the background. So if you see my screen doing some weird stuff, that's the reason for that. But yeah, like I said, we're going to start with Massey's, which means we will be discussing what happened with Ship 36. So I'm going to probably start us off with, oh wait, you know what? I almost completely skipped over this. We do have Astro Joe handling questions and donations today. So thanks for doing that, Astro Joe.
Hey, thanks, Zack. Always good to join the stream with you and Alex. We got episode 157 here with the flight images from Wednesday around, 4 p.m. Central Time. So yeah, let's enjoy the show. Here we go.
Yeah, and we, as I said, will be starting off at Massey's, and because these images are from Wednesday, it was basically right before the testing event at Massey's, so we did initially try to go back up the next day, but due to availability, we weren't able to do that. So luckily, we actually do have some images of the aftermath, which thankfully Interstellar Gateway was allowing us to show for today. So thanks to them. And I'll probably give you all some more information about how you can get the gallery of images for yourself if you would like to see them. So once we get there, I'll put out a little reminder about that. In the meantime, let's go ahead and move over to masses. I think we'll start with, I think we'll do things in the order of how they occurred. So first up, we had the single engine static fire of ship 36 on Wednesday. Yeah. And finally got some interesting footage from SpaceX. I'm actually going to turn the audio off here because we don't necessarily need to hear that. But really cool angle of this for the first time. I've actually been waiting to see the engine bay view from this for a while because you can actually look into the trench for once, because in every single video they've ever shown us of static fires on this test stand, it's always from an angle where you can't actually see the water deluge system. So this is pretty cool. And I'll play it through like one time first really quick. So yeah, I think the cool thing about this is that like there's so many different well, it's one water system, but there's different layers to it. They actually recently installed, I think it was after the first 60-second static fire test, they installed a new, they basically extended the water system and added this rail on either side. And this is basically to protect the rail that the sliding platform moves on. So you actually do have quite a bit of heat around the rim of this opening. And from some views, which I don't really have prepared today, you can actually see that when this RVAC turns on specifically, it actually, during ignition, the plume actually kind of just barely touches the edge of the opening until, at least until the engine starts to like ramp up and thrust. So it definitely is good to protect all of these other components in here, especially for that sliding door to keep moving. I'm guessing they must have noticed some issues and realized they needed to actually be able to cool that surface. So yeah, you can actually see those jets spraying towards the wall where that rail is located in order to cool it down. And another cool thing, we actually are able to see some of the jets. It's really difficult to find the exact timestamp where you can see it because it's when they start to throttle down. I'll try and like pause it at that moment. That was really difficult. So you can actually see the water jets splashing up from the side, which I don't know, maybe it's because I'm showing it in the browser. It's really hard to see it because it's at the bottom. It's really because every time I move the mouse, the play bar comes up. So you can see it right there at the bottom. I might show that again from a different outside of this browser window. But yeah, so they basically performed this single engine static fire test. And then they had about, I want to say, a day and a half to get ready for the 6-engine test. So there was actually quite a bit of work going on outside of the vehicle during that time. So number one, they have to replenish some of the commodities, like mostly the water and possibly a little bit of nitrogen. I feel like they have enough methane to like not really have to worry about that side, but there is a little bit of time in between events because of that. So I did notice I actually ended up doing a little bit of a time lapse, and sorry for the flashes that are on here, but this is a time lapse of basically after the static fire, the single engine static fire, and then leading up to the what was supposed to be a 6-engine test. So I did notice that they were actually doing some work inside of the payload bay. This is actually, they didn't go in at this point. They were kind of just thinking about it. So I have a lot of speed ramps in here. So anytime there's clouds overhead, you'll see some flashes in there. So I'm sorry about that. So yeah, this went through the night. They were back and forth in and out of that payload section, doing some work inside of there. And this is actually interesting. And to tell you the truth, I don't really pay attention to this stuff normally, so I don't know how frequently this happens in between tests. Like, how often they actually need to go up there to do anything. And, the weird thing about this entire situation is that obviously they had a successful single engine test, and then, they had basically the outcome of that 6 engine test. So really weird that they went through that single engine test having no issues, and then all of a sudden during the what was supposed to be the 6 engine test, the ship basically exploded. So things are definitely different as when it comes to a single engine versus a 6 engine test, as far as what's required from the actual ship. So like you have COPVs that are used to start up the engines, and obviously when you're using only a single engine, your pressure requirements are probably different than when you have 6 engines, and probably you may only be using one COPV versus 6, assuming that they have 6 individual COPVs, one for each engine. So yeah, lots of work going on in there. But the other thing to note about this, because I imagine some speculation could come out of this video clip. The COPVs in the ship are way up in the top up here. So I have a feeling that whatever they were doing in there may have been related to like avionics stuff on the top of the forward dome, because I don't think you could actually set up a bunch of scaffolding to get all the way up to the top of the nose cone. Yeah, as far as any time we've ever seen any interior shots of the nose cone, we've never seen scaffolding like that or anywhere to set up scaffolding like that. So I highly doubt they're actually working up in that area. But when you play it like this, it kind of looks like, some mistakes were made, potentially either, missing something during an inspection, or I don't know, just messing with something that maybe shouldn't have been messed with, possibly. But again, I highly doubt that they were actually way up there in the actual area where that where those COPVs are located. So, and when we watched this in slow motion, and I'm actually going to bring up another cool shot from DYs with NSF, because this is a really good slowed down version of it. You can actually see it basically unzips itself. I hate the way that X does this. It always plays the first few seconds at a lower resolution. Yeah, it literally starts from the top and works its way down until it basically splits the entire nose cone off. So the forward dome would be basically right below that. So after this, you basically have the nose cone going off in one direction, the methane, and I think this is the methane tank that we're seeing all this fluid from. So that's liquid methane, and then it appears that the actually, I'll take that back. It's a little difficult to tell which tank that's from. So you have that initial explosion, and then you have another explosion where the LOX tank and methane tank are basically combining. So yeah, pretty aggressive. You definitely see a lot of things in this footage. You can see some COPVs flying through the air. This, we believed over here, was the payload door over in the edge over here. However, in these other images that we'll see here shortly, we actually know where that payload door ended up. Actually, maybe that's it right there. No, that's the COPV. Sorry.
Yeah.
So tons of stuff just flying through the air, and it's just really impressive the amount of. What was that?
Oh, I thought I saw it on the right side.
Yeah, it should be
But
over here somewhere. That could be it.
oh, or is that it? Right? The,
Right there.
no, those are all. That's the COPV. There it is.
There
Top
it
of
is.
the. Yeah, giant
Payload
band-aid.
bay door. Yeah, that thing is massive. um, yeah, so lots of interesting items flying through the air, which kind of funny being able to identify them from so far away. I'll actually show one more angle of this. Starship Gazer had a really nice view of it as well. And I imagine this was very crazy for him, being as close as he was. From what I've been told, some people who were filming this were able to like actually feel the heat from this, and I think that's more like I don't know, Alex. Maybe you can describe it. It's like you're not actually feeling the heat from the flames. It's just the brightness of it that you're feeling on your skin, right? Like, am I
Yeah,
wrong about that?
it's infrared from the long wave radiation from the flash.
Yeah,
So technically it's the heat, but not in the traditional sense.
right. Yeah, and this view is really cool. I mean, you can see kind of the same things. It's a little bit clearer, in my opinion, as far as all the debris that's flying off the screen on the right side or the left side. Um, so I think that is the nose part of the nose cone that was just flying up there. Um, and then you'll see that payload door fall out again. Um, yeah, this definitely resulted in a fire that lasted for quite some time. And that's one of the things we'll kind of get into with this. Um, there were some, I think, some confusion about just the series of events after this, um, because the fire department actually did show up, and this is an extended time lapse I did right here from the from Lab Padre. So this basically shows like where all of those fires were located out over here. So we can see something burning back here. We can see these are some vaporizers, which I'll show a little bit in a second. And then behind these, the methane tanks, we see some more fires. Um, there's more going off on the right side, which are out of view right here. But yeah, I think I'll touch on each of these things individually once we look at the aftermath photos. But I think first we will probably look at the recent images from the uh, the day of, before we look at the aftermath. So this will help us kind of put some things into perspective. So the vaporizers in question were these ones right here that I was mentioning. But yeah, you can just kind of see in general the general layout. Any of you guys who've watched this show regularly, uh, are quite familiar with everything at Massey's for the most part. And yeah, this is the that wind services lift platform that I mentioned. You could see they were down there preparing to get inside of the payload section and do whatever it is they were doing. Elsewhere on site, they're also preparing for the structural test of test tank 17. So this one, and we're going to be circling around, I guess, in topics here. So this is the test tank, which is basically testing the aft section um, of the version 3 booster. So this is a very important test, which we'll be getting. I'll probably come back and mention this in a bit. Luckily, most of the stuff that was in this area didn't get damaged. So I'll actually show that really quick. We'll go into some of these interstellar gateway photos. And while I do have quite a lot of photos from them, I'm only going to go through a select few of them because you know I'm sure they would appreciate if you guys would support them as well. So if you would like to see the full gallery of their images, you can become a member on their YouTube channel and gain access to the full flyover gallery. They actually, this is like 2 gigabytes worth of images right here, but from what I've been told, they actually have significantly more, like more than 100 gigs worth of footage from this. So yeah, as you can see, the aftermath ain't so pretty. The test stand, while the actual superstructure itself seems to be, you know, relatively fine, all of the support structures that are on top of it, so all of the walkways and ladders and whatnot, were pretty much obliterated. If we look at that from one more angle, you can see those walkways, they're all crumpled and whatnot down there. But you know, the actual stand itself, minus the clamps that are clearly not in the best condition, some of them have actually been blown off of this. I feel like most of this will buff out on the test stand itself.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very heavy duty structure. You could argue it was made for that event. Can't really say the same for everything else, but you know, as far as having to make repairs on this, that is, in my opinion, a good thing that it is built the way it is, because you know, replacing walkways and ladders and whatnot, pretty easy, but actually having to fabricate another one of these structures is a completely different story. So difficult to say how long it took for them to actually make this. So this was like done in 2 different phases. So most of these components were delivered to Starbase in sections. So like each leg section was on its own, the beams on the side, and then I believe the top plate was in multiple sections as well too. So all of this stuff was fabricated elsewhere, delivered here, and then assembled. Difficult to say how long that fabrication process took, but I imagine it was probably on the order of, you know, 2 to 3 months if I had to guess. So good thing that they most likely will not have to replace this, at least the superstructure of it. The gantry for the ship QD was completely obliterated. You can see the work platform underneath here. This actually slides underneath the test stand, and anytime you see them transporting the ship, this will usually be underneath it, and so you can't actually look up at the engines because this work platform is underneath there. That might actually not be too difficult to replace. I think it's just the plate on top that's damaged. The actual structure itself may be fine. More importantly, I think the sliding door on top of the trench appears to be in, like, I can't really see any difference on that. Obviously, you have all of this laying on top of it, but I have a feeling this is fine, and the actual trench itself is fine. We'll look at the flame bucket a little bit later, but yeah, the main structure of the actual trench appears to be in relatively good condition. But the propellant distribution system is completely destroyed for sure. So as you can tell, looks like the probably LOX and methane tank landed on top of each other right here, and this was like basically ground zero for the secondary explosion. And it really just turned all of this pipework into spaghetti, basically. So this is not ideal, and one of the things that results from this, and that's kind of why we saw those fires continue for so long. So I mean, even this flyover, I think, was at like 7 p.m., which was approaching like 20 something hours after the event, and there's still fires burning on the site. The actual main fires continued for, I want to say, about 8 hours. And then you had all of the smaller fires burning for much longer after that. But one of the big things that happened pretty much immediately during the initial explosion was these boxes right here getting taken out. And so if I look at what is actually contained over there, you can see that they have 2 transformers sitting out here. And this is basically the control room for the entire test stand. So this is how this entire facility power distribution starts right here. So with that being taken out, you basically have like a loss of power, a loss of comms, a loss of power everywhere at the actual static fire test stand. So that's not good. And that basically is what kind of led to those fires continuing for so long, because anything that was still functional basically wasn't functional, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is, some of these valves may actually be still in working condition, like especially some of the ones that are back in this area that control the actual flow of methane, both in liquid and gas form. And some of these may still be operational, but without power, and Alex may disagree on this, but they're basically going to be frozen in whatever position they were already in. So, Alex, you were saying that sometimes these systems are set up to fail closed instead of failing open.
Depending how you're setting them up, some of them you have to feed them constant pneumatic pressure. One of the
Right.
reasons some of them will have the accumulator tanks next to them. But yeah, you'll usually if you have inline valves, one will fail open, one will fail close, just for redundancy, especially at the main shutoffs.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, where they are basically most damaged at, or where you have instant leaks occurring, is basically right in this area. So you have both. This is the methane side right here.
Yes.
So the entire methane distribution valve. What do I want to call this? Yeah, the methane distribution is right here. So you have valves right here, and you have the same thing on the other side for liquid oxygen. Both of those are destroyed. So basically, you have anything that's still within this line is instantly just leaking out. So not only do you have liquid and gaseous methane, you have the same thing on oxygen side, and you have high pressure oxygen and methane, which are basically feeding back to the vehicle. So all of that stuff combining together allowed this fire to continue for quite some time. One of the things that was most visible burning were these vaporizers. So I think during that explosion, some of this shrapnel right here ended up basically passing through these vaporizers. And these are basically a bunch of tubes that go up and down. And so you have a vertical storage tank for methane, which basically that's what these vaporizers are for. So turning liquid methane into gaseous methane. And one of the reasons I believed that these failed in an open position is because of the fact that this fire continued for so long. So, I mean, obviously you're going to have whatever was contained in there at the time is going to burn off once they're punctured, but it went for hours. So I have a feeling that basically a loss of control to this tank, which allowed, if I had to guess, this tank is empty now. That's what I'm getting at here. So all of that tank bled off through the vaporizers, and basically just a continuous fire as you, are basically burning it as it's being released out of here. So that was enough to actually melt one of the vaporizers totally, and the other 3 all sustained some pretty good damage. And I think by the time this tank was empty, the state they were in. So had they been a little bit more in this tank, you probably would have seen these melt as well too. But yeah, that's not ideal. We also have the actual methane pumps themselves were burning as well. You can kind of see they're a bit charred right here, and some other angles they're actually still on fire. I'm actually maybe I'll just show that really quick. You can just barely see it right here. Got some flames coming out of these right now. And again, this is like 20 something hours later, so you can only imagine what was going on throughout the day. But yeah, just taking inventory of things that are damaged back here, that is definitely something that probably is not in the greatest condition currently. And you also have this system that is for the methane recovery. So for detanking, this is the tank they use to actually, when they drain methane out of the vehicle, I believe it comes in here, then it separates liquid from gas. Liquid goes back to the tank, and then all of your gas goes over to this flare stack, which I believe this was damaged as well too. You can see some damage to this pipe right here, and also to the from some angles you can see damage to some of the pipes that actually feed over to that. So lots of different methane leaks happening.
And on the stack, it looks like it burnt on the where it goes into the ground and popped up at the stack as well. And
oh, you mean through here and then down to here?
yeah, that has some charring. The top of the separate phase tank is also looks like there's extensive damage and probably some burning.
Yeah. You know, the good news is these tanks are designed pretty well, and luckily the 4 tanks carrying methane did not explode, especially this one over here. Um, you know, with a basically a fire right on top of it. Without the insulation that's in the walls of that tank, then you would get some pretty rapid heating of the liquid, and that would increase the pressure inside of there very fast. So luckily, these are designed in the way that they are to essentially be able to survive fires like this, or else it may have caused even more damage, which is kind of hard to believe because it's quite extensive already. But yeah, there's lots of components laying around all over the site. I'm not going to go too deep into that stuff because I mostly want to just focus on what it's going to take to recover all of this stuff, like what it's going to take to actually rebuild. So, you know, if you guys do want to go in and look for all these other components that we found out here, like the common dome for the ship, I would either recommend checking out the IGW stream from yesterday, Interstellar Gateway. You can search for that on YouTube, or their channel, their page on X as well too. And yeah, once you can either watch that live stream or become a member on their channel, and you'll gain access to all of these images. There's it's quite a fun, well, I don't know if fun's the right word, but an interesting scavenger hunt looking for all of the components of the ship that you can see laying around. But yeah, focusing on infrastructure, do have some charred tanks, but I do think they actually, I don't know. What do you think, Alex? Do you think these are probably fine?
The back to the end one is definitely fine. Probably the front one would be the one I'd concentrate more on. But a lot of the paint hasn't charred. I mean, the black part I'm assuming was hydraulic fluid from the splatter pattern, or and
right, which you do have hydraulics. Actually, I'm not
yeah,
sure where that would come from though.
it's right by where all the lines transition to the gantry. It's right under there.
Oh, okay, so spraying this direction over to those.
Yeah. And the other thing, the rails that it rides on survived a 60-second static fire without much effort, and this heat was probably substantially lower.
Right.
And because if it's the high density and close cell insulation on the cryogenic pipes is charred, but it doesn't look like it burnt off completely. So
Right. Yeah, I suppose there's some process for determining any damage to these, which may involve like actually being able to get inside of the tank. Um, but I was thinking initially like, okay, well, they're probably gonna have to empty these tanks in order to get in there and just do an inspection. But something I noticed uh, from here was that these tanks were actually being. There's a line down here that's basically water being pumped into the tank, and that line actually ruptured. So in this shot, you can actually see that basically it's draining the tank. And I think with the way these are set up, um, these valves actually these valves go in all three tanks, and they should have been closed at this time. But the fact that this is leaking tells me that these valves are damaged.
definitely.
S Yeah, so the question is whether or not this is just a single tank this is happening to or all of them, and for now, I'll say it was probably just that one tank, um, because when we actually look into the trench, you could see that the water is, like, flowing from here and into the trench, so for some reason, uh, when they were grading this site, they allowed the drainage to go in that direction, which is really odd to me. Um, but yeah, it's all down here in the trench, and you can see all the water down here. You can actually see in the bucket itself. I think the water, because the water goes all the way to the back of the trench, basically at this point. Because this is, I mean, we're talking about an entire tank, at least one full of water that's down here right now. So um, it's all the way to the back, and I think it may. I don't. This right here on the bucket could be left over from a previous test, the single
Uh,
engine test, because there's no way to drain the bucket. You can drain the trench, but you can't drain the bucket. So either that's left over or it's actually coming up from underneath it somehow, which I think seems a bit more likely.
yeah, because that edge kicks up quite a bit from the original. It's not obvious here, but I think it's around a 15 or 20 degree angle at the end of the bucket there.
Yeah, and this is probably about um, 5 to 6 feet deep, I want to say. Um, Ryan Hansen and
At
I are
least.
working on an episode. Oh, sorry, and I just noticed something from him that he mentioned to me. He said that there are COPVs in the payload bay by the Pez dispenser. Huh. So I suppose it is
Y-
possible to have been working on some of those COPVs while they were inside the payload bay. But yeah,
And
so
they're
yeah,
and
go
those
ahead.
are on both sides. There's two banks of three on both sides of the downcomers from the Hatter tanks.
Okay, well, I'm sure there'll be some speculation there, but yeah. So I guess the question down here, I mean, obviously there's all the bottom of the ship basically pooped itself out through the opening and into the bottom of the trench, basically down the bucket, and you can see the thrust puck from the ship. There's some engine components down here and all that, but because these had to have been forced down at a pretty with some decent force, I would say. Could imagine that there's at minimum some dents on the actual flame bucket. Hopefully, no actual like penetrations of it, because um, in my opinion, repairing something like this is not necessarily that easy. Um, Initially, and this was something I said during the Interstellar Gateway scene stream yesterday, was that like if you had a few damaged pipes, you could theoretically remove a section of pipe and then just replace it. However, with the way that this is assembled, these pipes are so close together that you would never be able to do a full circumferential. I cannot say that word. You would never be able to weld the full circumference of that pipe because of just the way these are laid out. So, um, yeah, hopefully there's no damage to the flame bucket, but that is one thing to actually to really consider when it comes to like what it's going to take to get this site back up and running. Um, let's see. Another component that obviously is like I'm just thinking of like long lead time items as far as replacements go, would be that control room right here because I don't know how, but like this thing appears to have burned from the inside out. Um, yeah, like when looking at other images of this, like there's not even a door here. This is
It's
the only door.
ele- it's elevated, so I'm sure it caught fire underneath and then burnt us. Kind of a
Yeah, that's a total
yeah.
loss for sure. I wonder if it was potentially like an electrical fire.
Yeah, that high voltage did not fare so well.
Yeah,
And two of the electrical vault manhole covers blew off, which is
not a good
kind
sign.
of no.
um, yeah, so this is one of those things that like you have pre-made and then it's delivered. So that is kind of a long lead time item to basically make another one of these. Um, luckily, though, most of the other things on site seem to be relatively undamaged. Obviously, this tent was a total loss. There was some weird stuff going on way back here with the cryo lines going to the ship cryo station. Like you can see that they're burning. It's still burning right here, and every single joint, every flange, the insulation is charred, which is very odd. To me, Alex and I were talking about this yesterday. Like, not sure how that's possible these are leaking at all of the flanges somehow.
That's the only. But there should have been burst tests that would have let go long before to crack
Yeah,
all those joints.
one thing I'm thinking of though is that the liquid oxygen supply is so it's tied in. So all of these uh well, there is a valve skid right here that basically separates the booster from the ship as far as distribution goes. But back here to this point, everything is tied together, going all the way to the static fire test stand. So I do wonder if there was like an overpressure inside of these pipes that basically caused damage to the flanges and allowed them to start leaking or something like that. Does that even
Yeah,
sound realistic to you?
that's where you would have. What's weird is this whole section, like you're saying, should have been isolated. But
Yeah.
yeah, and the booster section, they didn't have the issues, so perhaps a control circuit. The valve
Flipped
was
and
open that should.
yeah, yeah. Because I think that they there are some manual shut-ins along inside of here, so it is possible that because they're still working on the booster cryo station, that they actually have these manually shut in on the booster side versus um, using the control system to control the valves on the ship side. So yeah, that is a possibility of having some relation to like why this happened over here. But I would imagine these are done.
Yeah. The good thing, the pipe runs at least are commodity.
Yeah. So potentially rebuilding the entire distribution system for the ship side. Luckily, the actual booster cryo test station, which is needed for the new V3 boosters, seems to be relatively untouched. The ship cryo station is at Sanchez, so that's good. No damage on that. Reported safe. And everything on this side, I didn't see any real debris over here, thankfully. Buckner's LR 11,000 managed to get out of here unscathed, which is impressive. And even more importantly, in my opinion, well, actually, this is probably the most expensive thing on site. But as far as the overall program goes, like, it's really good that hopefully nothing happened to Test Tank 17, because this is, as far as vehicle hardware goes and potential delays to the program, I would say this is probably the most important item out here. So that kind of segues us into, what next? In my opinion, I think there are two options here, which they're probably deciding on, or maybe they've already come to a decision. Who knows? There are certain things that need to change for the next version of both the ship and booster. So obviously, like I said, they're rebuilding. They had to add new QDs onto the booster cryo station, and obviously building a new actual test station for that. I don't know if they're going to need to do the same thing for the ship or not, but I imagine they probably will. That they might actually be able to just change out components on that, because it's not as drastic of a change as what happened with the booster. But with the gantry, for example, like, the question is, like, do you rebuild the gantry for a V2 booster, or V2 ship, or a V3 ship? And that's a pretty big decision, because it affects pretty much everything. So if you decide that you want to, if you decide that you rebuild this for V2, then you'll have two more vehicles left. You'll have ship 37 and ship 38, and after those two, you need to start reconfiguring this for V3, which will be a different QD design. May potentially require hardware changes in here as well too. So they're already, we're expecting, and this is kind of just reading between the lines with things that Elon has said. He mentioned that, well, obviously this has changed, but they were expecting to basically do back-to-back launches for the next 3 launches. And the reason it's exactly 3 is because they had 3 V3 ships left. V2 ships left. So they were expecting there to be a gap after that, and that there's a gap for many reasons. For one, Pad B needing to be commissioned or completed, tested, commissioned, needing to perform structural verification testing for the V3 boosters, so that they can actually finish constructing the first V3 booster. And they're going to probably need to do structural qualification testing on the V3 ships, which they have not done at all. They have not even, we haven't seen a single, I think we saw something at one point that looked like it had some hardware for orbital refueling. But as far as actually hardware coming to the test site, nothing yet. So the question is, do you spend 3 months, and that's being generous on my side. I think it would take longer, but 3 months rebuilding this in order to, and then essentially having pushed out V3 hardware by 5 months at that point, or do you just move on? You know what I mean? It's a difficult decision, and in my opinion, the best way forward is to move on. What do you think, Alex?
Especially since they already have any components for V3 switchover in their supply chain.
Yeah.
So and they were doing part of the methane farm anyway. With the new tank, it probably wouldn't. I mean, if I would probably just plow most of the current methane farm and just clean sheet redesign.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Because I think this farm would look a little different with had it been designed by the team that's doing Pad B, which I think is probably a different team than what did this. Just based on what we've seen in how they're doing all the tank farm stuff down there, pretty positive. Two different teams designed those systems, so this will likely look very different when they change out to V3 hardware. And yeah, I mean it sucks, but like I feel like Ship 37, Ship 38, Booster 15, 16, 17. I personally think none of those are going to fly. Interested to see what people think in the chat.
Yeah. I mean, I would speculate this was designed by the McGregor team because it has all the hallmarks of their infrastructure.
Yeah, that's pretty much guaranteed. So the this deluge system was duplicated at McGregor, and they basically they have two new vertical Raptor test stands, and these, if you see pictures of those, I haven't didn't really think to get cleared by NSF to show this, but it looks identical to this, just smaller. So yeah, this basically has their fingerprint all over it for sure.
The vertical tanks, like they have them on top of the test stand, so if they have a failure, they're sort of safe. Which on this configuration is probably not the best idea, but
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what it will look like when they redo this. One thing that I have always like been thinking about, and I'm just going to go ahead and switch back to RGV stuff here. So once again, thanks to Interstellar Gateway. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, let's go ahead and answer some questions because I'm sure there are probably some in the chat. Astro Joe.
All right, sure. But I first want to thank Sharpie for gifting a membership, as well as Booster 1058, Cashew Crew gifting 5, and Jack's gifting 1. I got some support coming in from Anonymous, $4.99 super chat. Hey, at least the payload bay door opened effortlessly. And Yazada with the, yeah, I know, right? And Yazada with a $10 super chat. Love hearing Zack's take on all this. And Drew Nar with a $2 Canadian super chat. Bob the Builder, can we fix it? Appalachia Run with a $5 super chat. Elon said version 2 would have improved reliability. I think version 2 has improved ruddability.
Ouch.
I know, right? And then collectively, a lot of questions have come through, not just from one person, but what about blast walls being built for the next generation of Massies, and possibly a second flame trench for redundancy is a big question that's come up a lot in chat. What do you think?
Alex, what are your thoughts?
Bunkering, that would be kind of challenging. The valve assemblies, you could. Having the tanks in a shadow of a structure, but you don't really design for the vehicle to blow up. This is, as far as anomalies go on test stands, this is kind of out there. But and this with I mean, if you look at Pad B, with all the propellant lines are in vaults, you could ostensibly, but that would almost be a complete redesign of the site and moving everything to like the parking lot by the entrance and then having all the lines and vaults, but I don't think you would necessarily go that far unless you had a longer term plan of, say, putting 3 more flame trenches in a row. So whereas the
Yeah.
current deluge and methane, just put in a couple
Yeah.
more, but that'd be insane.
I feel like there's no way to protect this stuff, and I don't think that is something that they would even consider, because they would probably expect this to never happen again. And um, I mean, in all reality, we've seen the launch site has a gigantic berm um, next to Pad A, and um, that did not stop the tank farm from being damaged during IFT1. So, and that wasn't even an actual explosion. It was
Yeah.
technically it was like a ground level explosion, like the earth exploded. But something that's raised, the ship is like way up here. You know what I mean? Like that you're not going to protect against that. So, um, the true solution is to make sure it never happens again, basically.
And you sort of design it the same way you do refineries and anything the petrochemical, where when something goes, it's segregated away so that it can burn out peacefully without intervention and spreading.
Yeah, and I have seen people both in the chat right now and um, on X saying that you could distance this stuff, and like where
Yeah.
you can't. There's there. This is the spot for it. Like it. Um, I suppose you could move it a little bit further in this direction, but that wouldn't have saved the situation. Um, Ideally, I think, when I was talking about this last night, like ideally, if they had access to this land right here, then the methane farm would be way over there. But they don't. So yeah, the best case scenario, in my opinion, for making this site as safe as possible would be to get access to this land over here, move the tank farm all the way over, and then um, that clears room for a second trench, because if they were to add a second trench, they would need access to this one way or another. So I don't know if splitting them on either side of the methane farm is the greatest idea. But right now, at this point, it's the most likely idea, because it's the easiest. But if there was a chance of getting access to this as quickly as possible, that's what I would do: is move this over, and then just run longer methane lines over to the trench, and then you'd have your water. Your water farm would be the one thing that still remains in between the two test stands. And I I think I've said this on multiple shows over the last year, that I've been expecting them to construct another one of these. Um, not for what just happened, but because eventually they may need to test at a rate where they have just two test stands. You know what I mean? Um, you have one ship on the static fire stand, and the other stand basically at the Sanchez site, waiting for the next ship, essentially. Um, so yeah, this is. It'll be interesting to see if they build a second one. Um, I have my doubts that they are going to go down that route anytime soon, but definitely something that is worth considering.
All good
Yeah,
points. Yeah.
in that triangle lot, it's owned by the Fed, so that'd be a little more challenging to get.
I heard Donald Trump is giving away a lot of federal land, so maybe
Yeah, that
maybe they can get access to it.
right.
Anyways,
That's
Astro
funny.
Joe.
All right, I got a question from Ayush Nikal. Question: is it better to sacrifice the time by not skipping version 2, or sacrifice the data by skipping to V3?
Um, like the worst case scenario what if you build all of this for V2 and then the next V2 ships explode? Like the same things that we've been seeing on the last few flights. That would be awkward and would have made all of this for nothing. You know what I mean? So, in my opinion, I mean, but also on that note, like there's no guarantee that the problems that exist currently on V3 or V2 will necessarily be solved right away on V3. I mean, there are some things that, as far as fires within the aft section, maybe there is a very good chance that that wouldn't happen on the V3 ships because they're not going to have a false ceiling. So, yeah, there's a possibility that skipping straight to V3 would just like completely eliminate a majority of the problems they've been having. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think that's just the best way forward.
All right. Question from Liam Donald. What would have happened if this occurred on the launch pad, pad A?
About the same. The
Well, you'd have a
it
booster involved there.
you'd have a larger fireball. You wouldn't necessarily have. There's two detonations, in my opinion, but most of it was a deflagration. So it's very hard to mix LOX and LN2 without it reacting. So what's interesting on the slow-mos, you can see the white cloud of vaporizing LOX leading the flame front, which the only difference would have been if there's more methane, that would have just been a flame front.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sorry, I was trying to show it again.
And it's very much like for special effects, for big fireballs, you'll have a bag of gasoline with some det cord in it. So you're essentially just doing the same thing. You're just making a huge cloud of vapor or small particles. So you get a very impressive fireball, but no real energy behind it.
All right. Yeah, good points. Question from Magnum. How will the SQD interface change from block 2 to block 3?
It's a good question. We haven't really seen any hardware for that yet. I think Chameleon Circuit probably has some ideas on it, but they're still working on that stuff, so difficult to say. But what we do know is that there will probably be some consideration, design consideration given towards orbital refueling. So I think if you don't want to have to carry multiple versions of QDs, you're probably going to want to, even on ships that won't be doing orbital refueling, you'll probably still have that stuff designed into it because, I mean, you kind of have no choice, given the QD. You only have one QD on the actual launch tower, so yeah, it will have something to do with enabling orbital refueling, I think.
And potentially, if splitting the LOX and the methane side of the QD.
Yeah,
All
good
right,
idea to
yeah.
put them further apart from each other since, if you're doing orbital refueling, a lot of times I'm assuming you be difficult to ensure that you're not getting leakage. So separating them a little bit, probably a good idea.
And with that, my question queue is clear.
Cool. For the first time ever, we just spent an hour on Massey's, and oh wow, we're not even done, huh? So yeah, let's just quickly touch on the booster structural test stand. I need to pull up some ground images that I didn't previously have ready, so just give me a second. And a second's over. So yeah, the booster test stand is basically being readied for this test. It's actually wild how long it takes because there's so much going on here. So they have the cap installed now. There's actuators on the top, on the sides, and then you also have actuators. Oops. Let's see here. Going into the tank. So these are going around, and I think there's one that goes in horizontally. I think that's on the other side, though.
Yes.
Okay. And this is a very important test. So they're doing. This is actually. They've never really done anything like this as far as testing internal components of the booster like this. They're definitely putting way more effort into structural qualification testing with the V3 booster than they've ever done for any other component of the ship or booster. So this is a very important test for them. I did have some renders from Chameleon Circuit that show what the inside of this tank looks like, basically. So you do have a upper tank right here, and then you have the what is essentially the LOX tank. And these are the penetrations through the side where those actuators are coming in through. So there's like a big rod coming out of here, which the actuators are attached to through that mechanism right here. Boop. And then one coming through the side. So it looks like they're basically wanting to be able to, I think, pull down on this either on all sides at the same time. So like basically pulling the whole thing down or being able to shift it from side to side. I think that there was some speculation that the booster 14 had a common dome related failure, like just too much stress in that area, which could be something that they're trying to prevent in the future. And this making sure that you're not going to have any like issues within this area is maybe what they're doing. But if I'm not mistaken, part of this is not the actual tank itself, but a structure on top of the tank. So we can see that right here in this image from Starship Gazer. There's a huge shell on top of it. Tell you the truth, I'm not 100% sure how this thing works. But that's what it looks like. So I'm not sure. Oops, I'm lost. I'm not sure if this is the. I don't think this is the full header tank. I don't know. I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, it's definitely. If the tank we saw go to McGregor is a full tank, this is maybe a quarter of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it looks like they're trying to get it to flex from side to side for however much for the strain on that downcomer, because it's only technically being held by the lower portion, and the top is kind of the downcomer stabilizing it, so a lot of moment forces on it.
Yeah, it'd be cool if they because like sometimes like ULA a lot of times will show stuff related to structural qualification testing. Tori likes showing that stuff off. SpaceX rarely does that. I don't think they really ever have. But it would be cool if during the live broadcast for that first flight with V3 hardware, if they kind of get into some of the structural qualification testing, that would be pretty cool to see some footage from that. But yeah, they are on their way to doing this. I wouldn't be surprised if we won't see much. We'll know that it's happening because it'll get all frosty and whatnot, but it'll be difficult to actually see anything else happening, especially from the distance that most cameras are located. But I don't know. Maybe we'll get lucky if one of the photographers down there happens to be find a position close enough where you can actually see some of this actuation occurring. Because in the past, we have been able to see on can crusher tests, you can actually see the small movements from the actuators. So it is possible. But yeah, there's just so much going on here. I mean, like I said, with the actuators up top, on the sides, inside, and on the bottom, that is a question I'm curious about, if they'll be using all of this at the same time. But I imagine that'll be some very interesting data that they're getting from that.
Yeah. Wouldn't even begin to speculate how you'd program
Right.
those test cycles.
Yeah.
You have 20 around the top, 5, 10, 50, so 35, and then whatever's underneath.
A lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, we spent more than an hour on Massey's. I think I'll try and move us along. One thing I did want to touch on first, which actually occurred last week, which we didn't have a show, but Starship Gazer actually, I think he was the first one to figure this out, that Lindy, which is they're basically specialize in these air separation plants. So they're actually building a plant in Brownsville.
Yeah.
So they've started on that. This will basically be what we were expecting to see at Starbase, where they did originally have a air separation plant there, but they ended up removing that. And so it looks like Lindy's building one in Brownsville, which I think there is some partnership going on with SpaceX from what he said. So this basically dramatically reduces the distance between sourcing for liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen. So right now, as far as we know, they still pull those commodities from Houston. So it is a very, very large difference in mileage when you're talking about the amount of loads that they receive in between each launch. So this is interesting, and also oddly enough, we actually have heard that SpaceX is actually still planning to build an ASU. So
Yes.
that's actually expected to be across the street from the launch site, which I'll probably touch on that again when we get to the launch site, but just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is it looks pretty much a similar layout minus these storage tanks.
Being raised
And
having a
round,
large,
yeah.
this is probably liquid nitrogen and then 2 LOX tanks, basically.
Yeah, it depends how they're biasing it, but probably most places need more nitrogen.
Yeah, and Alex and I talked about this. Like, if SpaceX builds their own ASU, then who's the customer for this? And I did float the idea that maybe they would be selling those commodities to the LNG facility at the port, because these guys have a lot of subcoolers out here. So they're, I think they're on the other side of this. Where'd they go?
Yeah, right by the crane.
Bro,
The big high pressure.
which crane?
Oh, in the the top there's 3 vertical steps.
These ones?
Yeah, those are.
And then they have a bunch over here. I think these
are. Those are
they're
more the high pressure boilers. Yeah, there's the subcoolers. Yeah, they're all over.
So these guys are going to need a lot of liquid nitrogen. But on that note, just looking at the way this is set up, there's a big, huge pipe run over here going to nowhere in the middle of the facility. So I speculate that they're probably going to build their own ASU down in this area. But yeah, this is one of these days. It'll be worth doing a deep dive on this facility, even though it may have no relation to Starbase. I would consider it a mega project. So yeah, pretty interesting to go through at some point. And they got a long way to go, actually. There's yeah, a lot going on down here, a lot of foundation work that they're preparing to start additional structures, and this one's basically being mirrored over here. So tanks are nearing completion as well too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean 39A or 3637 will have its liquefaction plant as well. So
On site, yeah.
yeah.
Cool. If you guys have access to these and want to go through some of those images, if you're a member of the channel or a supporter on Patreon, then you can go through and check out some of these images. There's pretty cool stuff going on at the port, like this aircraft carrier being disassembled. They've actually finally started making some good progress on that. So tons of cool things to look through at the port. In the meantime, I will go ahead and take us over to the Sanchez site. So I don't know. What do you think, Alex? I feel like Sanchez was a little bit boring this week.
Pretty much.
Yeah, not a ton happening.
Only the weird linkages that showed up, but it's right in the center frame on the top by the arms. But
yeah, I think I need a different image though. These?
yeah.
I'm guessing there's probably a better side view of that. Maybe?
I think that one might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we're really expecting linkages to be on the hold down arms themselves, but these are, I think, thin enough to go between the arms where we're expecting there to be some sort of door to
Correct.
close the actual structure. So that could be related to that.
Yeah. There's also a pivot point up there that's accessible from outside of the bay that the main clamp arms sit in.
Oh, inside of the, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. These are, I wonder if there's some like doors down here, possibly.
This,
I wonder what these are.
we never could come up with a good idea. Perhaps by next week there'll be more pieces
Yeah.
that'll make it more apparent.
I'm going to quickly just go to the launch site just so people can understand what we're talking about here. So in the actual, for where the hold down arms are, wait. I couldn't see. I was like, where are the ones that are installed? I guess they're right here. Yeah, so you have these openings right here. Assuming that once the arms close, there's going to need to be something else that closes to close the gap up here. So expecting to see some hardware coming out of here that's basically like a door. So this possibly could be related to that.
Yeah, and the only other interesting thing here is the power station is.
Yeah, I'll go to that here in a second. They haven't done anything with the QD arm yet, right?
No.
They're still.
I mean, they put on, it looks like some of the control panels, but.
Oh, there you go. Some gas panels right there.
Yep.
Nice. Can't wait to see this thing roll out so we can hopefully actually see that stuff.
I know.
Yeah, and this is an example of like V3 hardware, in my opinion, because you would never see panels like this on the existing QD. They do have relatively similar, but not like this. These are far more compact and like just overall better designed. Really impressive, all of the stuff that they have going on with that, all their fluids management. Yeah, so I guess the other thing, oh, and Ryan asked me about this, so I'll go ahead and show it really quick. Should they decide to rebuild Massey's for the version 2 ships, there is an actual ship QD out here somewhere.
Right below your cursor, by the above the white semicircles, and right to the right.
Oh, right
Down.
here. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
hard to see. Yeah, so got a ship QD laying around out there. So theoretically, that could be the replacement, assuming they don't have others elsewhere. Let's see here. The other thing that, as mentioned, is there is some interesting work going on to dismantle the generator facility. Wow, it's really difficult sometimes to find the right image. That's not going to do it. Maybe? It's close. This is really, oh, there we go. So yeah, this is basically, this generator facility was allegedly supplying backup power to the production site, although I personally don't think that was true, just based on having traced out all of these underground lines and whatnot. I was pretty sure that this was primarily intended for the air separation plant that was over here. There is a possibility that they managed to tie this in to the incoming 3-phase power from Brownsville, but I never really was able to like actually prove that. So as far as we know, this system has basically been unused for quite a while now, and they are currently dismantling it. So this over here is basically, I'm pretty sure, like a big radiator panel.
Yeah.
So you have these big, what are they, 3,000 horsepower?
Yeah, they look like marine
I think.
engines.
Yeah, they're like 3,000 horsepower dual fuel pumps. So basically, they can run off of diesel or natural gas. But like it's been a very long time since we actually have seen this in operation. So oddly enough, it appears that they're dismantling it. They have already taken off the stacks on some of these, the generators. And this is really weird because they literally just added on this extra part of the facility like a few months ago. So it's never a sign that things are permanent because, I mean, they build stuff all the time and take it down shortly after. So I have some thoughts on a possibility of what's going to happen with this, but I will return to that thought in a little bit. In the meantime, we will go over to the production site unless we have any questions. Astro Joe?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to thank Todd Bernal for a $10 super chat saying, attention, any SpaceX employees watching. We want videos and info on tank testing, please and thank you. Wouldn't that be nice? We got Biff Pope upgrading his membership to the RGV Aerial Elite level. Thank you very much for that support. And I got a Schizoquark with a question, probably an ignorant question, they state, but are the current megabays equipped for V3?
Kind of. We'll get to that here in just a few minutes once we move over there.
Yeah, I figured. But yeah, that is all I have in my question queue currently.
Yeah, definitely. And, we don't really talk about this a whole lot because we try not to, ask these things all the time, but it does really help when, you guys donating and all that stuff, especially, we pretty much do weekly flyovers, but occasionally, like in today or a few days ago, it is ideal to do flyovers back to back. So, your guys' donations go into allowing us to make that happen. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that this time, but yeah, you guys definitely help us out by supporting the channel in that way. It's quite expensive doing all of this every week. So, you guys donating on the streams definitely helps us out a ton, especially with just the overall amount of time that goes into this, not only just doing the flyovers, but preparing for live streams and all that stuff. So definitely want to thank everybody who has been donating. And of course, everybody who is a member of the channel or a Patreon member. So greatly appreciate all of your support.
Absolutely. And with that, Chromatic did just gift a membership here as well. And everybody in chat, a few are indeed counting how many thumbs up we got for the stream so far. I've seen about 11,000 currently watching and only around 350 thumbs up. So please go ahead and hit that like button, everybody.
11,000?
I'm sorry, 1,100. Yeah, I wish there was 11,000. Jeez. Yeah. All right. I need more coffee. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, we'll go ahead and move over to the production site, where I guess the big news for this week is continued work on the foundation preps for the Gigabay. They have officially finished up all that sheet piling, and now they are preparing for all of the rest of the groundwork, which Alex and I have argued about for just over a month now.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of pro on my side, so all good.
We finally have an answer to what they're going to be doing here. So they did. This is basically going to be identical to what they're doing in Florida, which is drilling a lot of continuous flight auger pilings for this. It is a bit curious, some of the ground prep happening, because they're putting some of this, what do you call it? Geogrid down.
Yeah,
So they're going to be drilling through that?
Yes.
Is that
They're
normal?
you can do it, but they probably put the holes in it because it's easier, especially with modern differential GPS and all that good stuff. You can pretty much get your piles within an inch of where they need to be.
You think there's holes in this?
Quite possibly. It'd be easier than, you could just put like a meter hole wherever you're going to drill.
Right.
But
yeah, it's going to be quite a lot.
I'm curious if they're going to use crawler cranes here rather than tower cranes, just because this is very reminiscent to how they set the crane pads up at the launch site.
As far as ground prep goes?
Yeah. Because you normally reinforce foundation work like this, but since it's a deep foundation, it's not as critical. And they're not doing a massive dewatering project with it either, so yeah.
You think that may still be to come? Like I feel like they don't have room for it, as far as where the concrete line is. Like it's not set up for that.
I'm of the opinion that the sheet piles are, once they dig down to put the pile caps, since there's not a lot of clearance just for the loading surcharge, they didn't want to this way they can basically do whatever they want on the perimeter without having to worry about it caving in when they're digging it for. It looks like the pile cap at the Cape is, I don't know, be 2-3 meters. It's pretty massive.
Yeah, and right now they have 2 drilling rigs here. I personally was expecting a third one to show up, but I guess they'll probably split the work in half between these 2. But there are 3 rows, or way more than 3 rows, but I guess if you put them into groups, there's 3 sets of piles, one that goes through the middle, and then another group through this side right here. So I was going to count them at the Cape, but then I got distracted when I was halfway through that. I'm not good at counting things like that. I get distracted way too easily. So yeah, there's a lot, about over 100. I think it's probably somewhere between 1 and 200 piles. But yeah, they got a lot of work coming up for that. They'll be, finishing all this, adding all the geogrid and additional gravel on top of here, and all the way down to here. And then once, pretty soon, I imagine they should be getting started on piles, probably starting in this corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If not, probably this weekend, because cages were dropped off and rebar was dropped off already.
Yeah, that's something that we haven't seen before, is completed rebar cages being delivered instead of assembling them on site. But that's nice. It reduces the work on site, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a less complicated pile design since it's all uniform.
What's up with
But
these?
I think some of those are seeps where they, because there's a few low points where they have, like right by the bulldozer, they have a sump. Yeah. So some will just bleed through.
Another one down here.
Yeah, and a couple of piles randomly for test drills.
So it's literally their dewatering system.
Yeah, it's since they're not digging down yet, there's no real point in putting one in.
Okay.
Since the piles are going to be sitting in water anyway, in the soupy mud that's down there.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, because if you look into that corner, where
Which
the
corner?
geogrid ends, right by Mega Bay 1, there's down, just where the gravel ends, there where they have their GPS or their leveling, and some of the areas they didn't put the geogrid all along the perimeter. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
It looks
these are
like
just
they're
like endless loads of gravel being dropped off all day long,
right.
every day.
Yeah, this looks like how you set up when you're building like in a city and with existing structures. You just shore up your perimeter to not have to worry about damaging anything.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm not sure if there's. Oh well. Um, as far as the bays go, they did bring all of the new platforms that were being constructed out here. I think there was like 6 of them in total, I want to say. They have moved those into Mega Bay 1. So I think those are in the front corner for the turntables. This corner right here. We did see some of that last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago now. And it was difficult to see where they were putting that stuff in. But I think next time we happen to catch a shot with this door open, we'll be able to see that. And on that note, I have a feeling it might be a while until this door opens again. This height right here is basically enough to get any tank sections through for stacking booster 18.
Yeah.
So this is maybe as high as it goes. I do wonder, as far as if they're going to skip over V2 and go to V3 for both boosters and ships. I think they may be able to start getting a head start on converting the workstations in here. So for both the ship and booster, the clamp mechanisms are all different. So they got to switch out the actual platforms that the vehicles rest on. And I think if they want to get a head start on that, we might see 15 and 16 roll out to the rocket garden at some point, and that will just give them the ability to start working in here. But also on that note, they may not roll out in one piece, actually, because they also at some point are going to need to start converting the transport stands. So it may actually be easier to just scrap them, because I don't think they necessarily want to. They already have one transport stand being used for. Is this 17?
Uh, 15?
Yeah,
I forgot. I can't
I
keep
thought it
track of
was
them anymore.
17
Yeah.
because it doesn't have grid fins. I'm pretty sure this is 17. So yeah, they don't want to use up another transport stand just for storing a booster. So like this one is already doing too much right now. Luckily, they do have another one at the front of the Sanchez site, which is nearly finished. And so I guess at most they've ever really used at a time is two, really, but that's going to change soon. So I would say leaving one on there makes sense. Anything else, those boosters will probably get scrapped. Sooner rather than later, I have a feeling. They're definitely preparing to do a lot more work in here, so getting stuff out of the way is ideal. They have this new stand right here, which is nearing completion. This one's interesting. It seems like it's probably related to the header tank for the booster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like. But that's kind of weird, though. It almost seems like this platform would get lifted into an aft section.
I think it could be lowered over it, but that would mean, I think, change their whole stacking order, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the question is whether or not they end up rolling out aft sections with those header tanks already installed, or if they install them in the bay, which would be a step backwards in my opinion. But yeah, either way, I think once you have it installed, there's a ton of work on the inside, adding all the pipes in between the header tank and the actual vehicle. So this platform allows them to access different levels of that header tank, essentially. Okay, let's see. Moving on. They're also, I think it's weird down here, they have doors for another engine install stand. So I'm a bit curious if they're just going to retrofit existing stands or if they're going to completely remove them and install new ones. I'm surprised they would need new doors like this. As far as I can tell, there wouldn't necessarily be room for a full engine stand anywhere else. So that's interesting to see that down here. Okay, moving on a little bit. Let's see, make sure there's nothing else down here that I'm missing.
That's just a steady stream of retooling.
Yeah. And again, that marks another item on the list of things that get affected by the decision to stick with V2 or V3. Like, it allows them to get a head start on retooling in the bay, in the factory, at the Massey site as far as the cryo test stations, and at the launch site, it basically means no more work on pad A. So that's one thing I'll be on the lookout for is basically all work on pad A coming to an end. I think, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but I think all of the repairs to like the booster QD and some of the other stuff they were doing might already be finished. So there may not necessarily be signs on pad A that we'll see within the near future. We will probably see other movements happening that are bigger indicators than pad A construction work or refurbishment. Yeah, only other thing over here by the Star Factory is this facility that being added onto the side, which, as far as we know, is probably related to a TPS tile bakery. So this is, oops, I don't think any of these shots really show the tent that well. There it is.
There, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the current bakery, which is surprising that it's taken this long to get rid of it, but more than likely this will probably be moving into this structure right here, which I'm sure these guys are happy about because they've probably felt left out. They're the only ones who haven't gotten an upgrade around here. Um, so yeah, getting rid of this will allow finally for traffic to circle through the site because this has been basically stopping that from happening for uh, a very long time now. Let's see here. I think that's pretty much all around here. We could talk about this apartment complex, but there's not really much to talk about. They're moving very slow with this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of foundation work, but nothing since the last flyover, really.
I think they've further cleared this area out, definitely.
They fenced
Which
it
made
off.
Yeah, so we were expecting like a rec center at some point, but not sure if that's still happening. Um, there's plenty of other space they can add that, honestly. Like they can even build this up a little bit right here and put the rec center next to it and then just have some sort of like field here for like they already have a field other at the other end of the village, but it's possible that you can have like a, football, soccer field, whatever you want down here.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but yeah,
think
they're also doing work on the street, some drainage.
I think the rec center and the store sort of flip-flopped between Rio West and here.
So you think the store is here?
Or the store is supposed to be in one of the buildings, the further down, the steel buildings over here
I actually
on
don't have a
LBJ.
good view of those this week. Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah, I
Where?
think the white building, the rectangle across from the new tiny homes.
Over here?
No, that's to the
Across.
left. The one, that one, I believe they're converting over to the grocery store.
Huh.
Yeah,
I thought this was a rec center, but I also think this one was a rec center. I'm not sure, or at least a gym.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. It's. I mean, their plans change. But yeah,
And
put
I
in
guess we'll
better.
just might as well show Rio West really quick, just for those who want to see it. Not much to talk about though.
Yep.
Alrighty. I think we will go ahead and move ourselves over to the launch site. And I think I'll start with pad A since that's the most boring.
Let me just
Um,
knock out a couple of questions here, Zach.
yeah, of course.
Well, cool. Thanks. I do want to thank Petrie for gifting, or rather, a $10 super chat. Thanks for that support, Petrie. Chaos King asking if the skip to version 3, how long will it be before we see Pad 1 go since we're here?
That's a good question. I mean, they could get a big head start on that. That would give them like a 6 month head start uh, on foundation work. That would be nice. I think that also gives them a chance to have less overlap with some of the work that's going on in uh, the tank farm because they're probably going to remove a lot of stuff that's in here on this side because like this is outdated, a lot of outdated stuff in here. So a lot of things will be moving in here, and it'll be easier to do that now than it will be when you're also having to deal with launches from Pad B. So theoretically, they could get a massive head start out here. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. I have a feeling that some of the components within here, like this whole wall, potentially could be pushed back or just removed altogether. It's going to be weird to see how they do this because the trench, I feel like, is going to end like right here, and that's like that's not going to work.
No.
Yeah. So I think we may see this wall pushed back a bit, and then you'll just have like a straight wall going all the way across. So
Yeah, but in the report for Slicks 37, supposedly they're designing those trenches so the plume doesn't get ejected off the site, so it's already redirected vertical. So they've obviously thought of a way of redirecting the end of the flame trench to kick
sending it up instead of out.
Yeah. I mean, if given enough distance, it'll do it on its own, but I just wonder
this
if
was
they'll.
supposed to go up instead of out, and it just goes straight through it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't. I want to see how they would achieve it myself as well.
Yeah, that plume doesn't care about what's in the way; it just goes straight through it. So
Right.
yeah, that would be interesting to see how they end up doing that.
Exactly.
Definitely. All right, before we get too bogged down in that one, I've got to thank Felix11 for a $5 super chat. RGV, really appreciate the analysis you guys do every week, especially this week. So thanks for that. I got maybe Kai Nessel missed Sanchez, but a question: any progress on BQDs at Sanchez?
Oh,
No.
well, I mean, we can show it really quick. They do have, I suppose, some things that we skipped over a little bit. Okay, that's like literally the same image. Am I crazy? So actually, I need a view looking straight down on this. Maybe. Some clouds on the way up here, but yeah, these are what we were thinking are the parts of the BQD. The only new thing we've seen this week are some frames right here, which could possibly be related to it. We originally thought down here that these may be some rainbirds for the launch mount, but as it turns out, these are actually the exhaust stacks for those generators over there. So yeah, other than that, we've not seen too much progress in the as far as BQDs go. What is this? Did we figure that out?
No. Hydraulic, maybe? With a
Yeah, that's what it
giant
looks like.
reservoir?
Let's see that closer up. We need to see a ground image of that one day.
Yeah.
Get lucky.
Or
Anyways, a little squirrel to distract us right there. Yeah, so no real work on the BQD stuff yet.
All right, thanks for that. And then Spherical Cal asking, maybe I'm crazy, but does the purported booster header tank fixture outside Mega Bay 1 look warped on top?
It is weird. From the ground view, it doesn't look like that. So I'm a bit confused by it. Let's see if I can. Yeah, like this was the view that made it look funny. But I don't know. I don't know why it looks like that, honestly.
the parallel and the changing of the basically would be the chords along the perimeter.
The length,
Yeah, where they're
like they stick out.
Yeah. If you probably put a circle around it, the narrow where it bends in instead of being round, so it's giving that illusion.
Right.
Your eyes seeing it as being round, even though those are straight edges,
Looks like a little roller coaster track.
Yeah.
right? The Stetson hat.
All right, I want to thank Paul Tompkins for a 199-pound super chat. Says SpaceX make a simple adapter to fit ship on OLM-1.
That is not simple at all. But I actually thought about that idea too, but then I like quickly stopped thinking about it because, yeah, that's never going to happen.
I know, right? I wish. All right. Final question and a good segue to the launch pad from Chaos King. How will Pad 1 deconstruction look like? Will they blow it up in a controlled way or slowly dismantle it with a crane?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it'll probably be slowly dismantled, which I'm kind of excited for because, uh, that'll involve stripping off the outer panels, first of all. And I'm really hoping that, like, all of a sudden we get to see a bunch of new stuff that they added in there, which they've been hiding this whole time. So, yeah, I would rather see it dismantled that way than blown up. And I just don't think we'll see explosives used at this launch site. Unless for some reason they needed to bring down that tower. But, like, that tower, bringing that down with explosives here is completely unsafe. Um, there's not a good place to drop it unless you drop it over here, and that's not going to happen. So yeah, I think more than likely they'll probably keep the tower, remove the chopsticks, and probably remove the QD arm. And then the rest of the structure will stay, more than likely. But then, yeah, the actual launch mount itself will probably have to be dismantled piece by piece. And I really don't know how they're going to do that, honestly.
Call up the crew who's taking apart the aircraft carrier.
Right?
They obviously know how to chop up massive steel objects.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch, though.
Definitely. And when they cut the bidet.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that I would not want to have any involvement in is breaking out this foundation, because it's like, I think somewhere between 10 and 15 feet thick. I used to know it off the top of my head, but I don't know it anymore. But yeah,
15 sounds
yeah,
about right.
an insane amount of rebar down there, so not going to be fun doing that stuff at all. Yeah, they could just they could launch a booster by itself, without the water deluge active, and yeah, that would maybe speed the process up a little bit. But yeah, they're probably not going to do something like that. Was there another question?
No, that was it for the time being, but I did just have one come in from Chaos King. Have we seen the triangles for the Pad 2 OLM wall connection?
Triangles. Can you
Yeah,
repeat
I'm
that question?
confused about that myself. Yeah. Have we seen the triangles for the Pad 2 OLM wall connection? Not sure I get it either.
I'm gonna have to think about that one.
Chaos King, you want to clarify that in chat?
Yeah, and if he clarifies that, then I'll get back to it. I guess when we get to pad B pad. I'm not gonna call it pad 2, y'all. Like I try, but it just
Me neither.
doesn't come out. So it's pad B, and I posted this earlier on X like a few days ago. Like literally every official documentation that exists calls it pad B. So I like Dan, but I'm not gonna let him gaslight me into believing something that's not true.
There you go.
Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure we have pictures of some of the like screens inside of one of the control buildings that label it as pad A. I'm pretty sure pad A deck is what they label it. So we'll see. Maybe I'll go dig some of that stuff up. But yeah, unless they call it that on a stream, live stream. Well, he would do that. He would call it pad 1 and 2 on a live stream. But I need to see some official documentation, unfortunately.
As a proper CSI agent would.
Yeah.
So clarification from Chaos King regarding the triangles that connect the pad 2 OLM with the wall below, like the structure next to it.
I'm still confused.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry
I'm
about
not
that,
following.
Chaos.
Like, this is the wall. I don't think there's anything missing from it. Yeah, we'll cover all the pad B stuff here in just a second. Yep. I guess the only remaining real thing to talk about on pad A side is that they have been, I'm pretty sure they've been adding even more cladding on here. Like, these panels look new.
Yeah.
I imagine they'll stop doing that. And I actually wouldn't even be surprised if they removed the gray ones and put them over on the other tower, because they're making some progress on adding cladding to that tower. So yeah, again, I guess there is still some work going on here, but I again would not be surprised if it stops soon. They did apparently fix the door of the booster QD, so y'all will remember when I pointed that stuff out. Matter of fact, you know what? I completely keep forgetting that we have ground images. So yeah, I think what they did is they cut, because this thing was basically shredded and bent back a little bit. And there's a better shot of this. I know it. Let's see. There we go. So I think you can almost even see it here. I think they cut it along this line right here, and then added another plate right on in place. Pretty sure that's what happened. But this right here seems to have been grinded down too. I think that's the line we're seeing from the air. So it's possible that they cut all of this off right here. Bit difficult to tell exactly what they did there, but I guess they still have a crack on the inside.
Oh, wow.
Oh, some more weld repairs.
All SpaceX welders get a lot to do.
Yeah, and it'll be a lot of this work will potentially be unnecessary. So the good news on that, though, is there's a whole group of guys right here who can move on to another project and speed that along, even though they do have quite a lot of people on pad B right now. So, but I'm assuming they'll probably need some people over at Massey's as well too. So,
Yeah.
Cool.
A lot of
Back to
cleanup.
the air. I guess we'll talk about the tank farm, because that is making some great progress. They actually, I think, and Alex, you can maybe correct me, I think they're nearing completion on most of this stuff.
They are.
What frontal view is this?
The
Here we go.
lock side, except for one pump, everything's connected.
What happened here?
They pulled the grating for some reason.
That's weird.
Yeah,
Is that it on the ground right there?
I think so.
Yeah, so one pump missing, and then they've gotten most of this finished. Like, I think they're still. Did they
That was
do this part?
connected. Yeah.
So they connected all of the subcoolers. They connected all of those to the actual pump inlets or pump outlets, and I guess subcooler outlets at the valve manifold, valve skid.
Right.
Yeah, that's nearing completion. They're reinstalling all of these vaporizers right now. I think they got 2 of them in here. So these actually had to be um, repaired after which flight was that? I think 6 or 7.
7.
They damaged. These were damaged by the exhaust plume. So they took these down and they reinforced them with these cross braces, and they're just now bringing them back, reinstalling these currently. They're one thing I was thinking about actually, and I'm not going to get too deep into this. This is more honestly for Alex. If they start dismantling Pad B, they can get rid of this water heater station, or Pad A. They can
Yes.
pull this water. Yeah, this will probably be gone soon.
And I can't wait.
Right?
I'm part of me is hoping the Movac trailer that showed up today was because they're going to start draining those tanks, but I know that's just being optimistic.
Yeah.
How much I hate it.
So the big things, I guess, from this week over here was that they have gotten a lot of the pipe work for the methane side finished. So I mean, there was a lot of it was already here, but they have added a lot of sections in here that have the down joints basically. So it's really difficult to explain what's happening here because there's just so much pipework overlapping each other. But yeah, they basically needed the lines that are coming out of the pumps and into the subcoolers. And then they also need the ones that come out of the subcoolers and then around and down through the valve skids and then to pad B. So yeah, they're adding in all that stuff. What is this? Why?
Those are they need the elbows to take it down to the pumps. Those are the 2 methane supplies.
From the tanks to the pumps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of this plumbing is, I think, temporary for testing still. I mean, some of the connections aren't the final connections.
Right. Yeah, and they've, so just in case anybody really into all this stuff, they've basically like got 3 tanks over here that are separate from the other 3 liquid nitrogen tanks. Oh, wait. LOX tanks?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 4 liquid nitrogen tanks and 8 LOX tanks. And these,
yeah, go on.
I was going to say these have been separated off of the 5, not just with this gap, but they're not actually tied into the same LOX supply that all of these are. So basically, these are supplying other items in here. So I think one of them is going to the methane side for the tank farm. Another one's going to the LOX side, and then I don't remember where the third one was going. But they're basically using these temporarily for testing systems down here. And then once they actually, I think, finish commissioning all this stuff, they'll have to redo the pipework out here to recombine these back onto the liquid oxygen side. And then what were you going to say, Alex?
Exactly what you covered.
Do you think they'll move one of the LOX over to nitrogen? Or no? It seems like they have so much LOX.
Yeah.
Never mind.
They don't use as much nitrogen as you would think. I mean, in the report, it was, I mean, maybe a quarter of the amount of LOX they use per flight.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very curious how they separated them.
Yeah. I think another thing that will happen rather soon, if again, if they decide to stop using Pad B or A, something will happen, I think, with these methane tanks right here. And
Agreed.
possibly all of them, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised if they get rid of all of these and then well,
Those two are going to move.
they might actually end up moving these, possibly, but these the pumps and cooling skids, basically the subcoolers, are basically outdated for the new design. So I think they'll rip all of this out. And if they do that, then you could put basically identical sized methane tanks like this all the way along the back here, and then remove all of these. And then basically, probably, if I had to guess, duplicate this where these methane tanks are currently. So your pad A pump station would be here, methane tanks down here, liquid nitrogen, liquid oxygen, and then these. I think that's most likely what's going to happen. Or they'll stop what they've been doing here.
Right.
Dismantle all that, move them, remove these tanks, and then replace these ones over here.
And while we're down here, perhaps we should cover the potential ASU.
Oh, yeah, of course. So I don't know. I'm going to get a different view. Well, this is actually probably the best view. So it's not like official plans yet. Did you actually listen to that town hall or whatever it was?
It went to behind closed doors for a portion of it, but it looks like it's a final approval from the state that has the land swap and some other things associated with it.
So basically from those plans, it looked like the air separation plant was going to go right here.
Yeah, right by the traffic circle, right by the beach. Yeah, I don't know how they're getting that through because it's within the 1,000 feet in that dune exclusionary zone.
I feel like I would have done everything in my power to put that here. Like, not only for convenience of being within the same facility and not having to run pipes underground, but just to like not piss people off.
Right.
Yeah.
Or build it where Hoppy is.
Yeah, that would be nice. But I don't think they would ever get access to this land right here, though.
That's true. Yeah, that's all. And the dune land is easier for them to do land swaps for than the mud flats.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you don't have to worry about like Army Corps concerns, like what do you call it for the maintaining the floodplain or whatever?
Exactly. And that habitats, you can't easily recreate it, but dunes, there's ways of replanting damaged dune areas.
Right, that makes sense.
But it's also right in the path of Pad A's potential of flame trench.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what they do with that. I mean, it's interesting again, and this is what I mentioned when we were talking about the Lindy plant. It's like, okay, why is the Lindy plant thing happening if they're going to build one here? And Alex, what were your thoughts on that?
This is my tinfoil hat to get this one approved. It's sort of like the Massey's test stands. They did the sideways, but we won't have to close the beach as much. And did it that way. It sort of was the lid plant there. yay, we'll put it there, but we're still going to have all this traffic. But maybe you'll approve this one instead. And then in 2 years, there'll be an expansion. Because the document they submitted, it looks very much the low pressure cold box and the high pressure. It looks identical to the Lindy one they're building.
Okay.
Yeah, because everything is like 30 feet above the ground, and so it's all elevated and all that. So it's wow, you're gonna have a 150-foot structure right there at the beach.
Fun.
Yeah. Also, right in the plume.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I do wonder if, just going back to Pad A, one option that never mind. I don't think this really helps anything. What I was going to say is when they retrofit this tower, theoretically, they could move the QD arm to the other side and then put the trench this way. But then you're just sending the plume through the tank farm, so like that doesn't really help anything.
Yeah, in a perfect world, they'd relocate the tower and put the trench basically where the current water deluge.
What if they make a trench that curves like that?
Oh, like the Slick 6 at Vandy?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. My favorite flame trench.
Yeah, I mean, with the amount of water that they're going to have, it should protect anything from burning over here. But that would be ideal, I guess, to turn it. It'd be interesting to see how that dynamic works with that redirecting the plume in that way. I guess it's kind of the same as the actual flame bucket.
Yeah, just have a gradual. And they're not shy anymore with armoring their stuff, so.
Yeah. I think we covered pretty much everything for the tank farm, right?
Yeah, we're running out of time for the cool stuff.
I mean, we're already over time, honestly, but
Okay.
let's see.
I don't think anybody minds.
No, yeah, they're fine. So we'll go to Pad B, and then I'll save the best for last after that. Yeah, they've been making some great progress over here, I guess, top down. They've added a little plate on top right here, which is basically like a mounting surface, I guess, for the shell that comes on top of this for the QD structure. Can kind of see how that works a little bit better from this angle. So they actually have stairs coming up both sides of it, which is really cool. There's like stairs into here and then up to this, I think on the backside down here, and then it like curves in.
Right under that scaffolding.
Yeah.
There's a stairwell.
So then your flex hoses will come up in between here. Then you'll have a big shell on top, and then the structure that retracts is basically there's a similar thing going on to like right here, and that actual retracting QD structure will basically, I think these are like the bottom part of that mount essentially. So making good progress on this. This is the methane side. They haven't really started on the liquid oxygen side yet, but I think it's just because they are not going to have a huge box like this, at least on the bottom part. So they'll probably add some sort of frame in here. But you can see the flange for where one of those flex hoses will go. The larger liquid line is not visible yet. I'm not sure what's up with that, because this appears to be the liquid oxygen pre-pressurization line, I think.
Yeah. Should be.
I was trying to find a better view where you can actually like see that. Yeah.
Oh wait, there's the LOX line. Right by the right there. Yep.
Oh, there's just a big cover over it.
And it's huge. Yeah, I just put their trash bag over it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that thing is massive. Like, you could literally slide down that thing. You'd probably get stuck, but you could do it.
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
lots going on in this bunker. They're making a lot of progress on this. Is like one of the busiest areas on site right now. There's just so much going on in here because you're basically taking everything that used to be on the inside of the Pad A launch mount plus like 50% more stuff, I would say, and then putting it all in this structure right here. And there's, I think, a whole nother layer of stuff that may be going on in here that they haven't even started yet, possibly related to water deluge, if I had to guess. They were a little bit on the fence about how all of that's going to work because what we have seen now is a complete. They've finished running the water lines back here. So as you can see, well, they already had three really large ones down here. There's one for the left side of the flame bucket, the right side of the flame bucket, and the ridge of the flame bucket. So now they're down here. You can see that there's two larger, a large, really big line, medium sized, and then six smaller ones. There might be more than that. I think there's
no, I think there's
six.
6 currently, yeah.
So one of these goes to the actual deluge, or the pancake on top of the launch mount, and it's actually the smaller one, isn't it?
I think it's a large one, but my perspective's completely off right now.
I don't think I have an angle that you would need.
Their welding tarp is blocking it.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's a bit curious down here because we do know where one of them goes for sure into that location. But then I would say the rest of them are kind of a mystery, right?
Yeah, all 7 are. I mean, the smaller, the medium one, for a while I thought was going to be part of like the detonation suppression, but no, that's massive.
That is very large for detonation suppression, yes. But what we
Unless,
do,
go on.
go ahead.
Oh, the only other thing I thought of, if they're routing it to the other side for spraying down the bunker, but that also seems excessive.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm trying to find, there was a really good shot looking down on it. This is not it. This one. I suppose this is kind of the same one I was just looking at.
Yeah.
But we do see two lines going off to the left and right, and so inside of the actual flame trench, we can't see that one. You can see it on this side. So there is a little box down here, like for a sump. Basically, like all the water will drain into here, so they can pump it out. So I think the one that's turning in this direction will go down to here. So that will be one sump pump drain, and then the other one there's another drain down here in the basically identical position. So maybe two of these lines are return lines for draining the bottom of or pumping out the water from the bottom of the trench, and then we're still left with 4 mystery lines.
Yeah, I can only come up with the QD hoods, but that would leave 2 more.
Yeah.
Well, 3 more.
Well,
There's the big
I
one.
guess you could have like an actual fire suppression system and then the actual detonation suppression system.
True.
So maybe that could be what these are for. Did consider the possibility of like rainbirds somewhere, but I don't see that happening. There's not really a need for it. There's gonna be so much water coming out of this plate and down below that this launch mount will have more full coverage of water than probably any other launch mount on the planet. If I had to guess.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing I could think of is for the medium is if they're going to have a curtain spraying across the bottom of the mount, just a bunch of sideways jets across the plume. Yeah,
Right, that would make
but
sense.
but
Also excessive.
and right. Well, I mean, so far this has been the very much the bipolar. What's the bare minimum and all?
Yeah, it's going to be really cool to see it when it's when we figure out what these parts are actually going to. There are some water lines actually going, or there was some pipes that they recently put coming out of the launch mount. So I do think that there's a chance one of those could have been water line, possibly. So like going through the table and out. Um, but that's something we're gonna have to figure out in the future.
Yeah.
They also, I guess, since our last stream, have started adding all of these plates down here. So Alex and I were in disagreement on what they were going to do here. I was kind of thinking maybe they would go with like rebar and then fondag down here, but clearly not. They're
We're going
putting down
excessive.
plating. What was that?
It's just excess, everything.
Yeah, I mean, I like it though.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
That's the bolts holding the walls down,
Oh, yeah.
which how they're gonna cover them.
They'll probably put like a cover over this, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
little box that covers the whole thing going all the way up the side. And I think what they're doing here is not only are they welding each of these together, they're also welding them to the rods that are sticking out through here,
Yeah.
I believe.
No, I think you're right on that because there's no way they'd bolt it.
Yeah. I guess theoretically, you could potentially cut these off if you needed to, right?
Yeah.
And replace them.
But even if they weld it down, you can just cut around it because those, or they'll do it the same way that they did on, well, the first OLM. They'll just drop down it, weld down another burn
Another
plate
layer.
on top. Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. But yeah, the whole thing is steel. There's like no exposed concrete down here at all, which is awesome. They are still working on a lot of the commodity supplies down here. They got some weird stuff happening coming out of the tower, which probably a conversation for another day. Alex and I were looking at this a few days ago. And I don't even know if I'm going to be able to find the angle that shows it, but yeah. They basically ran some lines coming out of here, I think.
Yeah.
And then they disappear. And that's what happens when you miss a few days of a flyover. I think it may
we just have
go
to wait.
like,
They're going to dig it up. They're going to dig it up in a few months, so it'll be fine.
Yeah, we may find out.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of work going on inside the tower and out. They have obviously been doing the cladding down here. They have a bunch of additional panels down here, so they're just gonna slowly be installing. Oh, sorry, I thought there was. Oh yeah, there's some more over here. So yeah, they're still just slowly installing all these panels. You could see them on the other side as well too, I think. Yeah. I hope they go all the way to the top. It'll be really cool. Obviously, once upon a time we thought they would do this to the whole tower, but like you would need a really big air conditioning system through there because it'd probably get very hot. So I think we'll probably just only see two sides, which is still cool. And they're still have a big missing thing down here as well, which is actually running the lines in between the trench down here and the tower. So they're preparing to do that here soon. I think that it may go right here across, but that doesn't seem like it's deep enough to do what they need to do.
Not at all. I keep thinking that's a blinding layer that they just poured a bunch of dirt over, but
Trying to find another angle. I mean, I don't know how big this step is right here, but yeah, all of the cryo lines for the tower are basically in here. They've obviously ran everything from the to the launch mount, but they have all these lines right here. I think these are gas, high pressure gases, and then they have the three large cryo lines that are coming out of here, which need to run basically underground to reach the tower. So that's going to be interesting. So I'm assuming now that they've got this pad down, they've also started building the beginnings of a wall here. We'll probably see this happen next. I don't know. Maybe they'll just go around here for some reason.
yeah, I think that's where they're gonna put it. Will be yeah, where that pad is that they poured the dirt on.
Yeah.
But it's definitely confusing.
Yeah. And that wall actually will be extending down to here. You can see they've got their forms down here. So they're waiting to do all the rebar down in this direction. But before that, I think they still need to finish. They may be done as far as what's needed to continue this work, but they got all of those 6 water lines coming out here. So they still need to add the manifold for those underneath the tank, wherever that's going to actually end up going. Most of this stuff is completed in here, but they still need to add a few valves in. And I think there's going to be another line coming off of this one that goes underneath here.
Yeah.
So valve here, valve here, valve here, and then a line coming off of this.
Potentially
And
for one of those 6s.
yeah. The fun part, which was, in my opinion, my favorite news of the day, is that we finally have a good understanding of what they're going to do to force out roughly 450,000 gallons of water within a 60-second period. So to, I guess, clarify that a little bit, you wouldn't do all of that at once because there's multiple stages of this system. Like part of it is activated before launch and probably ramped up during launch. Then you also have, once the booster clears the pad, or once the hold down arms are tracked, probably is when the other system will start up on the top deck of the launch mount. And then when for the landing burn on the booster, you'll also have activation of that system. But if you were to run all of it at the same time, I imagine, based on the way this is set up, that theoretically you could probably drain all of this within 60 seconds. So that's pretty crazy, especially when you consider what was needed in order to push a similar volume of water on pad A. So we'll just take a look at that again really quick, just for reference. So they had all of these high pressure gas bottles over here, and these are cool. It worked out. Then they basically decided that they didn't want to do this anymore when they went to Massey's, and they had an active generating system. So instead of having to vaporize nitrogen and fill these tanks, you're using pumps actually to pressurize these tanks. That probably takes a while to actually fill those tanks. And I mean, these water tanks are much smaller than what is at pad B. So I wish I actually could show a shot that has both of them in frame at the same time. Almost. Maybe. No. I'd have to pull one from last week or something like that. But the question is, how do you force out 450,000 gallons in 60 seconds. And so I think they must have had some new people join their team or something like that, because they keep changing their water deluge system. Like they've constructed 3 unique water deluge systems in 3 years. And like my joke of this week was that literally the rest of the world is still using gravity. Meanwhile, these guys are like innovating water deluge, which is hilarious and awesome at the same time. So basically what we have here is we haven't fully figured it out, but let's just say, for the sake of explaining this, let's say you have gaseous methane over here, gaseous oxygen over here, and then you put a bunch of little baby Raptor engines on top of this manifold right here, and you pump oxygen and methane into that, and use that to vaporize liquid nitrogen at an extremely high rate. So right now, we're a little bit unsure if this is the final configuration for it, because they do have space for 5 additional systems for this. Right now, it seems like there's going to be 2 for this bank of tanks, 3 for this bank of tanks, and then 4 for this one. So basically, 1 generator for each tank, essentially. And yeah, they're going to be vaporizing liquid nitrogen at a very high rate using what I would have to imagine is probably very similar to the pre-burner on a Raptor engine. A little bit different, because I think those pre-burners, at least on the LOX side, I think it comes in as a liquid, I believe. But this, never mind. I'm not even going to get into that part because I could be completely wrong. But this is very similar, like I said, to a pre-burner. Very small. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if these are like surplus parts from Raptor 2s. Basically using them as generators in order to produce gas at extremely high rates. So the thing is, that is going to be loud, like very loud. We're not 100% sure exactly how loud that is, obviously, because it really depends on a few things. But yeah, I mean, if you have massive burners right there, and they have a very, very high flow rate of oxygen and methane running to them based on the size of pipes that we are seeing down here, I would probably equate that flow rate very similar to what we see on the Raptors as far as the size of those pipes. But I will caveat that with saying this is a gas flow instead of a liquid flow, so not quite the same amount of energy we're talking about here, but still a lot. I'm hoping that one day Alex will, he shouldn't have told me this, but do a energy balance to try and figure out exactly how much energy it requires to vaporize this much liquid oxygen or liquid nitrogen in a shorter period of time as they're going to be doing.
Yeah, I'll get that together because I want to know.
The way you said that was so funny.
It's true though.
Yeah, this is impressive. This is my new favorite thing about the entire launch mount, and I don't know. I love the GSE team. These guys this is whoever designed all this stuff, completely different team than who designed Pad A, and they're more thoughtful, I think, and got about a lot more creativity, I would say, as well too, because this is crazy.
And using their core competency.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, Ryan Hansen Space had actually joked about this, like, oh, what if they just use Raptor engines to build pressure for these tanks? And then literally that's what happened.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to be amazing. They do have some vents down. Oops, that's not the one I want. So it's a bit curious exactly how like the staging of all of it will work, because theoretically you should have the ability to like control throttle essentially. So not only are you controlling how much nitrogen you're flowing, you also control the flow rate of gas to those generators. Um, and so theoretically, you can start the system off rather slow just to get water moving. And then instead of having to be at full flow before ignition, like 15 seconds before ignition, you can probably get that closer to like 5 seconds instead of like 15, if I had to guess. You can also theoretically increase the flow rate as the throttle from the booster is increasing as well. So lots of options, I think, with this. And yeah, I'm on the fence about how loud it is going to be, but I'm pretty positive it's going to drown out the sound of everything else at the launch site. Because yeah, I mean that's just a big, huge energy reaction going on down there. Fun times, fun times.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
Yeah,
And we
we've
could
been
talk about
thinking
this.
about this for months.
And typical SpaceX, they were hiding everything in plain sight because you can read the stage 4 labeling from ground shots.
Yeah, I won't go into that today. I will save some things
No.
for the episode.
Yeah, we
talk about this stuff, but yeah, it's pretty impressive. It's like the whole system is connected to the actual tank farm over here to supply everything that's needed for this, and it's just amazing in general. I'm sometimes at a loss for words figuring out how to describe it because it's just so crazy, and I would say unexpected, but we did to some degree expect something crazy, especially because of the fact that there was just like there's no room for the systems that they have at Massey's.
right.
I suppose theoretically you could stack up a bunch of gas bottles here, about the same as what they had on Pad A. That probably would have fit here, but again, this is a much larger volume of water, so you would need a lot more of those gas cylinders, and yeah, this is just much smaller footprint, a lot cleaner, and I mean, a lot more control, I would imagine, over it as well too.
Yeah, I think the ability to readily throttle it is probably, and greater redundancy, because I'd imagine each one of, like, you could probably lose one of those per bank and still generate your necessary pressure.
Yeah, and it seems like they have the ability to, like, let's say this is not enough, they could just add a few more of these in down here, and if they need to, for some reason, increase the output from the system, they can easily do that. Um, I would argue they probably have room to add one more tank on each side if they wanted to. I doubt they will, but it is a possibility of seeing something like that in the future. But yeah, this is going to be wild.
They have the foundations for a fifth of the large tanks.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, it's already, yeah. And if somebody can figure out what those, was there 12 or,
Please.
yeah,
Yeah, topic for another day. We'll figure it out.
exactly.
So last thing going on down here is this big old pad that they're pouring, or that they just finished. So this was like basically at the entrance to the launch site. So we did watch this over the past few weeks as they were forming all this out, and like looking at it from the ground, it's very deep. I would say it's like what, like somewhere between 2 and 4 feet thick.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a
Um,
ridiculous thick bore.
yeah, seemingly for no reason, because like they didn't need that for. I guess they did put a similar sized one here for this big old um, VFD control center, basically.
Not
Um,
really, because they only put the piers down, and it looked more like a normal. It wasn't, this is halfway between the pump pad and the Lego pad.
yeah, and they do have more rebar that they've been delivering, so it's a bit curious what they're going to do here. But one thing that we have considered, I guess my very first thought was moving this building over here, like rebuilding it larger because as a control center, I don't think this just doesn't look right to me. Yeah, because you just have way more happening here. The cooling capacity on top of this is like nothing. Um, when you compare to what is over on pad A with this building, a lot of cooling capacity for that building, and they like for a long time it seemed like they couldn't figure out exactly how much they needed. They kept adding more, and so you don't see that same amount of cooling capacity on this actual control building right here. And this was originally for the suborbital tank farm. But the crazy part is they already have added a bunch of conduit over here, and I think I want
Not
to say
quite.
they opened up a hole down here and they routed it in through the bottom of the wall, if I remember correctly. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. But it seemed like the entire control system for Pad B was routed to this building already, which is crazy to me. Because it's small in comparison, even in comparison to what is currently on Pad A. And the amount of systems that they're running out of this building for the suborbital site is like a very tiny fraction of what they have going on now. So there's a possibility that they're reconstructing this over here, but again, they have not ran any conduit down here yet, so there's like not very many clues yet as far as what they're gonna do. But the one possibility that I have considered as an alternative, because we were talking about this earlier at the Sanchez site, um, I don't really believe in coincidences. They do happen sometimes, but oftentimes it is exactly what I think it is. So they're, as I mentioned earlier, dismantling these generators, um, and just so happens that this is about the space that they need if they were to move this to the launch site. So, bit on the fence though if it's actually necessary. However, um, certain things could make that necessary, like because the launch site basically gets its power from Brownsville. If there is a power outage in Brownsville, that affects them here. So theoretically, you could be in the middle of loading propellant and lose power, which would be a problem. So they do have some Tesla power walls, giga, what do you call them? Megapacks?
Megapacks, yeah. I don't think
Something like
they've come
that.
out to, yeah, the gigapacks yet.
Yeah. So there are some of those at the Sanchez site. I don't know if those are enough to, well, I know for a fact that is not enough to do what you need to do here at the launch site, given how much machinery is down here. So I think it would make sense to move those generators here in case you lose power down here. I mean, it is a big, massive um, generation facility just for that purpose. But I mean, you never know what can happen. So it's better to have a backup than not have it. The other possibility and another use case for it, however, um, as more than just a backup facility. So given that they're going to potentially have that air separation unit over down, it might also be a good idea to have backup power for that. So not only are you having backup power for the launch site, but the air separation plant, arguably more important to have backup power for, I think. Um,
Yeah,
because the startup process for that facility is very specific. It has to be started up in a very specific order, and same thing with shutdown. So if you lose power, I think the act of losing power could potentially cause damage itself, but there may be something in place that like gives you a little bit of a buffer as far as when you need to get this generator up and running in order to allow that process to keep going. Um, I don't know enough about that to really like speak on it, but um, I think this may end up being dual purpose launch site backup, air separation backup, or it could just be moving this over here, which honestly I would kind of like to see that as well because I just the placement of this is, I don't know how to say it without cursing. It's annoying. It's just like if you have OCD, like this is just ridiculous. I hate it.
It's now an art piece designed to
No,
make you uncomfortable.
but counter argument to that not happening, they just built a concrete pad connecting the two buildings, so it's like maybe it is going to stay there.
I hope it goes away. Because,
Me
I mean,
too.
it's barely twice as big as a Massey's control center.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the other thing is that, like, well, I guess just putting another argument in for the generator system, the generator at Sanchez actually does take up about twice this amount of footprint. But that's just because of the radiator system. But theoretically, you could put the radiator on the roof of this, and then you're basically combining the footprint and shrinking it by half. So just a possibility. If it happens, y'all heard it first here. But we'll have to keep an eye out on this. Whatever it is, it's probably important, though.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Should we have some questions?
Yes, please. I've got a stack of them along with some support. I want to thank Drew Nar for gifting a membership and Todd Malone with a $20 super chat, who says, "Good analysis, Zach." I must agree. And Yazada, $10 super chat, stating, "I love these shows." And Joni Mahoney with a $20 super chat saying, "Great stuff." And I got to say, we all agree with you all. Thank you all for that support. Stephen Fraser, thanks for becoming a member. And then some clarification from Chaos King on our previous question confusion, Zach. For when you're at pad 2, look at the side profile of the OLM and the BQD structure. To me, it looks like there are pieces missing on the side profile of the OLM compared to the BQD structure.
Like the wedge piece that didn't show up, and how the wing walls cover the bunker. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, I believe so.
Do we need a ground shot for this?
I think it's that top triangle between the top of the walls and the top of the deck. Yeah, right there.
Oh, that's what I mean. That's what it's going to be. I'm pretty sure. Well, it's difficult to say because I don't know if I have an angle that you can really see this that well. There's a bunch of scaffolding in the way. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to ever be there, honestly. I mean, it's possible, but I guess that would require them to remove these plates right here, which isn't all that difficult to do, I suppose. But I guess there's probably a reason why they haven't filled this in yet. And it could be related to that. But I mean, there's also an equal possibility that we're not going to see that triangle.
All right, then. That covers that mystery from earlier. And so, a question from Syed Usmani: how long would making new chopsticks take if they started today? Have they started any work on that?
Did you say chopsticks or pate?
Yeah.
Well, that that would be rather far off. Like assuming that Pad B is operational by November-ish, December, maybe, possibly slightly earlier. They wouldn't even start working on it until then, because like the whole trench needs to be done before that's even necessary. So yeah, obviously that timeline can get moved up, but they also have competing interests because 37, the towers at 37 are going to be, they're going to start work on that very soon if they haven't already. And so, yeah, they'll basically need 5 pairs of chopsticks within the coming 2 years or so. So yeah, haven't seen anything for it yet, but I would say that that'll probably be a bit ways down the road.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. That's a whole lot of work to be done.
And that could also be contracted out to fabricators if they've figured out their design.
Yeah, definitely. Johnny Rosta wanted to clarify the Tesla Megapack and provide 1 megawatt for 4 hours. I have a question. I'm sorry, say
The
again.
drawworks could probably burn that in 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly, right. All right, question from Schizocork. In the event of a RUD, do you think Pad B fares better than Pad A regarding damage and repair time?
Yes, by a long shot. Most of the things that cause damage on Pad A don't exist here. So yeah, I think they may actually legitimately be able to pull off back-to-back launches from here, like really fast. So yeah, tough to say right now, but I think after we see it for the first time, we'll verify that. But I do believe they've considered everything that they've learned from Pad A and found solutions for pretty much all of it. Like I can't really see anything lacking right now, other than, well, I'm not going to say that part. So yeah, I feel like it'll be way better than Pad A as far as refurbishment goes.
Yeah, definitely agree. Circling back around to Massey's, Kai Nessel asking a couple of questions here. Could they build a gantry / bunker at Massey similar to Pad B? And could they also be adding steel plates to the trench walls and floor? Basically, do you see a whole lot of retrofitting with a lot more protection at Massey's?
Um, Probably not. I don't think it's necessary. Like I mean, we have seen some slight damage to concrete over the time, but it's really difficult to say how bad it actually is. It's just like slight spalling damage on the walls. Um, uh, I do think it's possible to still add steel plates onto there if they wanted to, but I don't think the walls really were damaged. Like that's like probably the one thing out there that is in perfect condition. So yeah, I don't think we'll see that. That'll be a low priority item for them.
Yeah, for sure. It all boils down to let's just not have another RUD, right? So then, a question related, but at Pad B here, SpaceX Sammy asking the question: Are the ramp plates water cooled?
No.
Simple answer.
Yeah, sorry for being direct, but yeah.
All right, and then probably another simple answer to a final question that I have in my queue from Old Tech Guy Paul. Can a booster version 2 launch a ship version 3?
Probably not.
What's that
There's a
say?
possibility, but probably not. It depends on the clamp mechanism that may have changed between the having the clamps on the booster versus having the clamps on the ship. So that will be the deciding factor on whether or not those two can integrate with each other. But that question, then at that point, if you try to use a V3 ship on a V2 booster, like you have to change the QD on the integration tower, um, just to work with that, and that doesn't really make sense in my opinion. At the point that it would take for a V3 ship to even be constructed to launch with a V2 booster, Pad B would be operational, and theoretically, you would also have V3 boosters ready, which V3 boosters should be ready before V3 ships, anyways, because they're already assembling one right now. So I don't think you'll ever see a. Or was the question of V2 ship on a V3 booster?
Now, the other way around, could a V2 booster launch a V3 ship?
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I am clear of my queue. Do you all have anything else you wanted to cover?
Probably not for this episode. Have a lot, but not necessary.
Yeah, here we are at 3 hours.
Yeah, quite a long show today for sure. Thanks everybody for sticking around this entire time. I'm glad we were able to make it through everything that we had to cover today. And even though we're definitely in for a bit of a delay, quite a long delay probably between now and flight 10. Good things. I mean, while we all do like to see launches, not having launches makes other things go faster. So yeah, I don't know. I think one way or another they'll make the right whatever decision they make will probably be the right one, and you know it'll become obvious soon what they decide to do. Um, and again, just repeating what I said at the beginning of the episode, I feel like the difference between how long it takes to be ready for launch by repairing massies for V2 ships is probably only a month or two difference. Maybe just a month difference between rebuilding it for V3 and being able to launch on Pad B. That's my opinion. So yeah.
My opinion, skip 2, and the Block 3 campaign will kind of start up at least at the same calendar time as it was probably going to happen. So possibly a launch by the end of the year. But I'm horribly optimistic about these things.
Yeah. Well, thank you to everybody for joining us. As I said, thanks to everybody who donated today, and also for all the gifted memberships and whatnot. We appreciate that. And I don't know if we got new members today, but if we did, thank you to y'all as well. We will have plenty to talk about over the next weeks and months as they get to work. Getting rid of everything that was damaged at Massey's and rebuilding it and figuring out whether or not we're going to skip over V2 and go to V3. So, yeah, exciting times ahead, and we'll be here for all of it. So, yeah, we'll see you all next week. And for now, thanks to Alex for joining me today. Thanks to AstroDo for handling questions and donations. Matt for running the stream, and RGV, obviously, for getting up there every week to get these amazing shots. And again, if you guys are members, don't forget that you do have access to all of these photos, and there is literally a complete gallery of ground shots that I wish I had time to go through today. But I recommend going through those because they're really awesome shots. So thank you to everybody, and I will pass this off to Alex.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Joe and RGV. It was a great show. Too bad we didn't have another 3 hours, but like Zach was saying, subscribe, download the photos, and enjoy. And off to Joe.
All right. Yeah, I totally echo all those sentiments. Alex and Zach, always a pleasure to share the stream with you guys. And thanks, RGB and Pilot Fred, for making these flights happen. And with that, most engines cut off. Hot staging confirmed. Love ya. Bye.